Alright everyone, the TDS sufferers are getting a little bit desperate. We know that because they're recycling 2016's talking points. Link in the description, archived of course. This is just to Maddow ranting in red-faced rage about Donald Trump using the term poisoning the lifeblood of our nation in regards to what's happening specifically with the border crisis. Again, as I pointed out the other day, there are a lot of illegal immigrants in the United States from Eastern Europe, and an illegal immigrant is not a race. Liberals wouldn't know that, though. They look at them as cheap help to clean the toilets or wait on them, bring them lemonade when they're out in their wine garden and stuff like that. And also, you've got the resurfacing of those old claims that Donald Trump slept next to a book of Hitler quotes, which, I don't know, it's possible he's read that one time or another. I've read Mein Kampf, haven't you? I think most of us have. Should be required reading so that you can avoid authoritarianism more easily. No, Donald Trump is not a Nazi. But the desperation reeks right now. You've got Trump way ahead of Biden. He's crushing it in the primaries. They know he's likely to come back, and so they're just throwing everything at the wall and hoping something sticks. To the point where they're recycling everything from 2016. There's nothing even novel. There's nothing inventive about their claims against him. And if they were recycling claims that didn't work the first time, that might not be the greatest strategy. You might want to think something else up, but apparently they've got nothing. So you talk about indictment gate. They still recycle the Russia line, even though it's been totally discredited now for years. And of course, the Trump as a Nazi thing. I was unaware that Donald Trump was pro-censorship. In fact, the very first campaign ad that he dropped on Rumble for this election cycle was specifically about trying to end government interference and censorship on the internet. I was unaware of the fact that Donald Trump hated the educational system. It seems that he actually has it in mind to supply subsidized internet learning for, basic liberal arts courses to all Americans free of charge at the point of delivery. Now, that doesn't sound like anti-education. The Nazis like to propagandize to people. Such a thing would fall under the purview of agencies that I don't think are necessarily the most right-wing. Let's see. Oh, what about wars? Hitler loved starting those. Oh, that's right. Trump didn't start any wars and uses the Theodore Roosevelt strategy of foreign policy. Also, Trump happens not to be from Austria, and I don't think that he's very good at painting. He's also clearly not a vegetarian. But he drinks water. Hitler drank water too, so that's basically the connection. We've got a claim that Trump has read Hitler quotes, which is absolutely meaningless unless you prescribe up front that he's a Nazi. So you say he's a Nazi and therefore this is automatically evidence of that Nazism. Well, if I have Hitler quotes on my desk, it could just be that I'm reading the Hitler quotes and then I move on to the next book and I'm reading it for historical context or something. Just because I read Sun Tzu doesn't mean I intend to invade Mongolia, for example. I mean, it's completely asinine. Just because I'm reading George Washington doesn't mean I intend to foment a revolution in a colony somewhere and create a new republic, although the idea is probably a good one because the old republic that we're in here seems to be having systemic problems right now. I can read the Communist Manifesto. I've got a digital copy of it. I intend to write up a critical version of it, just parsing through the stupid shit that Karl Marx said and discrediting it. I think that would be interesting. Put some footnotes in. That doesn't make me a communist. As far as saying they're poisoning the lifeblood of our nation, who cares what linguistic term he uses? See, Donald Trump has been called a racist for addressing the border crisis anyway. Even addressing it at all and saying, hey, we need more border security, it's unsustainable what's happening down there, and even blue staters are beginning to notice that he's right when he says such things, even then he was called a racist. Well, Donald just doesn't like those brown people. Donald Trump hates Mexicans. And then he trolled him with the Cinco de Mayo taco bowl, you remember that? Which was also kind of a smack at Jeb, who was selling the guacamole. Yeah, but oh boy, I still fondly remember that one. And it was it was a really shitty little tiny guacamole too. Like probably made out of plastic, and it's like, okay, you could use a bowl. It's a good fundraising drive, Jeb. At least he was able to buy a turtle to keep in his pocket, and a hoodie and stuff. He's totally lol-worthy. Trump is not a Nazi. Also, the other thing is that the Nazis were strongly into centralized systems, so authoritarian, left-wing, top-down, very hierarchical structures. A lot of bureau forces, a lot of private labor that's been effectively appropriated. If anything, when Joe Biden uses the Defense Production Act and similar things to force industry to do his whim, that's closer to what the Nazis did than what Trump seems to have in mind. Oh, trade wars, tariffs and things like that? Well, please, please, tell me again how it's free trade when we trade with China and they tariff every import and we just sit there and do nothing. That's not free trade. Free trade is both sides are playing along the same rules and they try to devolve that protectionism down to as low a level as possible. That's the long and short. Why do you think you can't get French cheeses in the United States? It's because of dairy farmers in Wisconsin. Well, that's not free trade. That's protected trade. It's been happening for a while and did not require Donald Trump to exist in the United States. If anything, the era of real high tariffs is like the Whig era and shit like that, and we've sort of pulled back on it. What about government spying, surveillance and stuff? With Twittergate and all of these other things, we're finding it's the current administration that really hyped up all these programs. We're finding that. Hitler did not appear to really care about giving comprehensive tax reform. In fact, as the war ground on, of course, people are expected to contribute more and more. The opposite of Donald Trump's apparent attempt at reform. What about regulation? Well, the Nazis were a highly regulated state. Every time you cross the street, you have to show your papers to the Gestapo and stuff like that, and they eyeball you and say, oh no, your nose looks a little bit big, Hans. Okay, I guess, but I'm checking your papers on the way back, and I'm going to get my measuring tape. That's how it worked in Nazi Germany, at least if you were in an urban area. Go in the hinterlands, maybe some farmer, you get left alone a little bit more because you don't have to cross the street more than once during the harvest season. As opposed to Trump's regulatory reform, whereby for every regulation that was enacted, 10 had to be struck off the books. Which, by the way, is a nice idea. Should have been 100 to get struck off the books, but you know what I mean. Yeah. He slept next to Hitler's speeches. Okay, somebody saw Hitler's speeches on his desk once. Clearly that makes him a Nazi. That makes a whole lot of sense. Trump says that illegal immigration is poisoning the system. Well, it is. It's beginning to seep into the inner cities. Not that Rachel Maddow and people like that would know it because they live in penthouses and gated communities. And they have their vacation home in Martha's Vineyard and shit like that. They're immune to the fallout from their own policies. It's a part of the problem. That's part of the massive, stark hypocrisy of the system in the way that it's working currently. So, again, they're recycling 2016. They're doing that because they're desperate. They're not doing everything that's happening right now. Colorado State Supreme Court, legal persecution of Trump, recycling of propaganda, White House explicitly teaming up with legacy media to spew propaganda, the system being weaponized against lawful political opinions by U.S. citizens, a la Twittergate, etc., etc. These are being done out of desperation. They're not being done out of a position of strength. So, despite the fact that things are pretty dark and morbid right now politically and socially in the United States, don't get blackpilled. Realize they're only doing this because they fear losing. That's about all. Peace out.